Guess what's back? Business and Brews, where real business talk meets real people, and always fueled by a good brew. This time we're going podcast first, bite-sized, insightful, and built for conversations you'll want to share. I'm your host, Matt Pierce, founder and CEO of Immediate, and I'll be sitting down with leaders, entrepreneurs, and friends to talk about leadership, growth, and the stories that make business worth talking about. So grab your favorite brew, pull up a chair, and let's talk business the way it's meant to be talked about. Business and Brews, back, bolder, and better than ever. Hey everybody, it's Matt Pierce. Welcome to another episode of Business and Brews. Today we've got Jennifer Ryan, co-founder and CEO of Croux. Jennifer, great to have you here.
Great to see you.
Thanks for doing this. This is going to be fun.
I'm excited.
Well, let's get kicked off with the brew of choice. What are you drinking this morning?
You know, I like to caffeinate, and I've just got my homegrown brew. I've got a couple of espresso and some water in there, nothing fancy, and some creatine. But you know, my team tells me I have a caffeine problem. They might be right. This is the first of maybe a few today.
I was going to say, how many a day are you typically having?
I'm two, but I'm
Okay.
working on whittling that down. Yes. Look,
Okay.
other people have bigger problems than that, but I will say I like to have a cup of coffee in my hand when I start the day, and I usually have one when I start the afternoon, and I'm not ashamed of it. So
Yeah,
it's part of the rubric.
I'm right there with you. I feel like after lunch, I don't know if it's circadian rhythms or it's just my body after lunch going, you need a nap. Oftentimes I feel like I should have been born in Spain. I know the siesta over there is a big thing. I need that. But after lunch, I'm like, hit my second cup of coffee and that gets me through the day.
Look, there are plenty of greats who napped, like Churchill. So maybe you just need to weave that into your schedule and accept it.
Maybe we're onto something here. That might be a good plan. I may put that into practice this year. We've gotten to know each other over the past couple of years, and you've got a really cool story. I love what you guys are doing at Croux. Can you give a little background on your journey and what brings you here?
It has been a winding road. When I look back at my resume, it makes absolutely no sense. Maybe some other founders feel that too. I was an English major. I somehow convinced Wall Street to take me on right after college. I had grand aspirations of living in New York City. I knew that I needed to earn a certain paycheck to be there. I knew I didn't know a lot. I needed great training. So I ended up at a big bank, and I was there for a decade. It taught me how to think, how to analyze, how to create relationships, how to manage stressful situations, how to work with excellent people, and how to take care of clients, among other things. We had a financial crisis in there. I lived in a big city, was trying to figure out who I was, but it really was the foundation for me as, I don't know, the person I am today, the worker bee, the parent, the spouse. So much of my teeth cutting was, in that decade. But life takes us all in crazy places and has twists and turns. And I remember the younger version of myself really believing that I had clarity on what I wanted to do, where I wanted to be, where I was going to be living. And the truth of the matter is, life laughed so hard at me because right at the end of that decade, my husband was relocated to Birmingham, Alabama. And that shift to the Deep South, where we had no friends or family, we had just gotten married, was the most important shift, left turn that life could have given me. And we were in Birmingham for almost a decade. From there, I did what all people who worked in banking do. I opened a restaurant, which makes perfect sense. I did it during COVID. I opened my first flagship 8 weeks after giving birth to my first little baby. And the reality is none of that made any sense in the moment. I saw a gap like many founders do. I had the wherewithal, gumption, and complete naivete to think that I was able to do it. And some of that naivete I think was healthy because it allowed me to see what was possible, even though what was probable was not,
Right.
really clear. And from there, we survived the pandemic. We had a lot of folks on the payroll that needed flexibility. And without getting deep into the weeds, that is exactly in my restaurant days where Croux was born, trying to figure out ways to provide flexibility and fast payment to people who were on the front lines of an industry that holds up 10% of our country's GDP. And that was a few years ago. Croux was born with some killer co-founders. And now we're running fast across the Southeast and the Midwest and growing, leveraging our culinary experiences in ways that, I could have never dreamed.
Yeah.
So it's been a fun journey. And I think it's been a wild ride. But the more I let go and appreciate some of the twists and turns, I think the more fun it's been.
It's such a good story. There's so many pieces just in your opening of I feel like that big company foundation really helps you understand process, but then going through some of the other things that you've done and getting to starting a business where you're really focused on culture and growth. I think there's, to me, most companies that have figured it out have this beautiful blend of culture and process, right? If you get too culture heavy and you got no process, you're just like wild, wild west. Flip it the other way, you're too process heavy and you're no culture, as people are just robots and they flame out pretty quick. And if you can find that right mixture, that's where really good companies excel. And what I think is cool about your story is you got to start there with the process and then be able to go through and do some of these other things that start to build out that culture. I think that's really awesome. Also, I want to ask, because there's some twists and turns in there. There's, a move to Birmingham that allows you to open your first restaurant. From there, seeing what most great entrepreneurs see is, that thought is there's got to be a better way. Right.
Yeah,
There's got to
that's
be a
right.
better way than this. We've got to figure this out. So tell me a little bit about the origination of Croux. Obviously, you started to see some things in your restaurant, but what was it that really that made you jump in and start really doing this?
So I think there's, let's rip off the Band-Aid. Let's be really honest. There are things that we've all done in our careers where we found that we are in the exact right space and we're being pushed and we're being encouraged and we're learning, but we're doing the things that are innately interesting and kind of aligned with the superpowers that we have. When I look back at my 5 years running my restaurant, that was not it. And what I had big dreams for us to grow that into a massive organization with several units. COVID didn't totally defeat that plan, but it really made me rethink it. And I think a couple things happened, one of which was the foreground of a pandemic, which is forcing you to work and operate and see the world in a totally different way. I had a blue collar workforce that was dependent on getting paid, but they only got paid when they worked. And so if we were closed, they were not earning a paycheck. So fundamentally, trying to be a good boss to this group of people who needs to earn a paycheck, but schools are closed, so they've got to make that choice. And I've got to also make a choice as a business owner. How the heck do you thread that needle? So there's the foreground of just life forcing you to think differently. And not everybody has that experience.
Mm-hmm.
That was, the environment for us at the time. But in the background, the question was, where are my skills actually going to be the best used? And I heard a good quip the other day. If anybody listens to Lenny's podcast, you probably heard Molly Graham on there, but she had said something along the lines of, we have this proving stage in our career and you prove it that you can do it, whatever the it is, to yourself, to your parents, to society. And at some point, there is either a smack in the face or a slow burn where you start to ask yourself, what do I want to do? Now that I've proved, where do I want to take that? Because there's nothing else I need to do to prove to anybody else out there that I'm capable.
Mm-hmm.
And I think those two, sort of motions were happening at the same time. The world in the foreground was totally changing. It was asking us to think differently and to be responsible and creative in a world that just didn't make sense. How do we take care of our people? How do we keep a business alive? And in the background, I was asking myself, what does it mean for me to put my skills to work? And, the idea of growing a multi-unit restaurant just didn't seem compelling.
Mm-hmm.
And it just changed. I think that's the other thing too. It's okay to change your mind. And I asked myself, 2 years later, why did that not seem compelling? Was it because that was never a good idea? Was it because I was not equipped? And the truth, it was just the experience that taught me what that world looked like. And what I really wanted to do was to put some of the skills that I had really honed in my corporate life to work in a way that we could grow something much more scalable that took what we had learned from that really important chapter of Blue Root and everything I had gleaned from being, on the front lines of this very important industry. And taking care of people and working with business partners that also needed the same type of help, I realized that I could put my skills to work in a different way, is the truth. And now I'm also going to say something, which is life. We took another turn. My husband's job took us out of Birmingham. It is very hard to run a restaurant from 1,000 miles away. And so again, I had some macro pressures that were forcing me to make big decisions. But the truth is, all of those sharpened me to be the leader I am, to take the leap. And so taking that massive jump to leave the business that I had created to create something else with people that I didn't know really well, but I knew they were facing the same struggles, somehow made a lot of sense. And a little bit of that was gut. And a lot of it was a lot of hope and a lot of deep, deep faith that you're seeing an opportunity that's real, that you've kicked the tires enough, and that the people that you're in the boat with are going to have your back. And the bet paid off. We're only a few years in, so let us not call the shot now, but the bet paid off. It has been a wild, winding journey, but I think had some of those macro forces not been at play, I have to admit, maybe I would have come to the same conclusion, maybe not, but it was the world in which I found myself where there were a lot of pressures and questions being pushed and asked right at the same time that forced me to say, it's time to make a heavy left turn.
The underlying theme that I hear in all that is self-awareness and reflection. So many people get so caught up in what they're doing that they don't take time to press pause, take a step back and go, let me just sit quietly for an hour and think about what I really want. What's working, what's not working, what are my strengths, what are my weaknesses, what are things that are giving me life, and what are things that are taking life. Hats off to you, because I hear that story. And the first time we got together a few years ago, you were, right in the throes of Blue Root and just starting to get Crew going. And so it's fun to fast forward a couple of years and be able to hear some of this, that the way that you've navigated it. Can I ask you, as you went through that, I would assume obviously your husband, are there other people that you leaned on, mentors, friends, family, all those, are there people that you sat down and talked to, and how did you help process some of those decisions, those big decisions that you were preparing to make?
Yes, I will say one thing before I say that, which is I am unfortunately the person that is learning to take those moments to pause. Life has tried to get me to pause a few times, personal and professionally. There have been just, blips on the radar, a little bit of a twist, some sort of a question that's popped up. And usually I can will my way over the finish line. I can get there. I will be standing at the end of the race. I will finish what I start. I will be able to do it. But the question is, what did I give up along the way? And some of those pauses that I look back, and there's no regret in any of it. It was just me in that moment, not having the maturity, the capacity, the experience, the know-how, or the mentors, the people around me, whatever it was that I needed at those moments. I thought it was better to plow forward. And so here I found myself in a moment where there was absolutely no other choice. I had to stop and ask myself, the world is on fire. What are we going to do about it? And in that moment, what am I going to do about it? So I will say I am learning to be more proactive on the pauses, because they have given me space to think and to ask myself the hard questions. And for those of you who might have a similar personality, sometimes it's easier to keep moving than ask yourself the hard questions. And we can find success in moving toward the finish line that somebody else has set for us. And we can all be very good at that.
Yeah.
Because most of us out there have the capacity, to get to the finish line. The question is, are you racing for the right finish line? And
Right.
that has been a journey for
Great
me,
question.
particularly in the last few years. And again, life forced that one on me. So I'm learning. I'm still in learning mode.
Well, can I
Let's
can
talk.
I say real
Yeah.
quick? That makes me think. One of my favorite quotes. My children hear me say this far too often, but like what you're explaining, there's Tony Robbins says something that life doesn't happen to you; it happens for you.
Yes.
And I think when you take that mentality, to your point, no regrets, right? I look back, like those things and those moments happen for me. I think that really comes down to a lot of just the place that you are mentally and the way that you approach these things. That if you take that and say, all right, COVID happened to all of us. I can either let it lead me, or I can take this and turn it into something that's even better. Right. And so it's kind of how you respond to those things. And so I love that quote, and I kind of hear it in some of what you're saying, of like taking this approach of this, hey, this happened for me, and I'm going to take it. I'm going to make the most of it, and we're going to keep pushing forward in the right way.
Look, if you talk to any other founders, most of us have some unhealthy level of optimism that things are going to work out. And I think it's actually wonderful. I have that trait, for better or for worse. I really do think, despite how many flights of stairs I fall down, I'm going to land on my feet. And it may be after some bumps and bruises in recovery time, but I just have this strange confidence that there is going to be, I'm going to find the door out. I'm going to find the pathway. And I think part of that is a surface area that I gave myself in those early years, which is, some of those tools that you cannot take away from me. Some of them are technical, some of them are soft. It's the people you surround yourself with. So we'll go back to your question about mentorship. Like, you cannot do this alone. But I found that there's enough, I feel like I've got enough armor and enough ammunition and enough just resourcefulness to be able to figure it out. But I do have that strange trait where I just think it's going to be okay. And I have, I've got my flesh flashing cards of Marcus Aurelius and the Stoics on my desk, and reminding me that life is to really be enjoyed and to be present and to happen to me, and for me rather, not to me. But I think the other thing too, like, everybody's lives are different. My husband's job has moved us to two random places where we've had to completely rebuild. And I will admit to you, I was not the best spouse in the moment when those happened. I should have been proud and excited. And by the way, I learned also you can feel two things that are very different at the exact same time, right? You can feel pride, and you can feel love, and you can feel deep admiration, but you also can feel confusion and a little bit of nervousness around chaos that's about to ensue. But the truth is, after we moved to Birmingham, I think that was the prove it moment for me, which was, can I reestablish myself in a brand new industry that is totally dominated by men, in a space that I have no understanding of whatsoever? Let's be honest, I did not make any sense as a restaurateur. I just had some gumption and a really kick-ass chef, and I thought, let's go do this. I mean, what naivete. But the truth is, we built community. We built a business. He built his practices. We built a family. And I think there was something so confidence building and strengthening in that. Like confidence doesn't come because you wish for it. It's just this muscle that you've kind of got to keep walking the path that the person that you want to be. It felt like I was practicing to be the person I wanted to be. And then all of a sudden it became kind of real. And so when it happened again, where we needed to pick up and move and start all over, we knew no one here. And I had just started a business where my team is in a small room as a startup solo. And I am picking up and saying, good luck, I'm going to be 1,000 miles away. There was a little bit of confidence in, okay, we've seen this movie before, right? So I didn't mean to deviate, but there is this interesting thing that if you watch these things happen to you, if you're able to train yourself in that moment and say, I may not be able to answer it right now, but tomorrow or a week from now or even a year from now, is there going to be something I look back on and say, that taught me something, right? And it may leave a scar and it may be a little hard, but I do try to see in the moment, which is, okay, I can't change this thing, can't control this thing, but there's got to be something that I can glean from it. And so again, wildly optimistic, which is not everyone, but that's the founder trait that I think keeps us all alive.
Right.
But to go back to your question about mentorship, the answer is yes. And I know you have this group of people around you too. These true board of advisors, like the people that are actually helping you be the fiduciary steward of your business. And then these proverbial, board advisors, the board members around you, the directors, if you will, that I've got a person I can call for everything, right? I've got the friend who's going to give me the kick in the ass when I'm not quite being the person that I know I need to be. Or I'm having a hard time figuring out priorities and I just need a little bit of clarifying that. The people that have known me for a really long time. I've got the people that can help me answer the tricky financial question. I've got the folks that can help me really think through the strategic question of X or Y. And I've cobbled together this cool group of people that, again, makes no sense, but they're from the journey, And so that has been one of the biggest gifts of having a wildly broad career is that I've got all these perspectives. The trick is to figure out how to filter the advice, right? And that I'm still learning too. But these are people that I really trust in a lot of ways. And, it's never a solo venture. You do this thing alone, A, you won't be very good because you've hamstrung yourself, but B, it won't be very fun. Yeah. So those are people that have been bosses, they've been colleagues, they've been teammates, they've been friends, even folks that are more junior to me, just have a different perspective. It's just, it's a mixed bag, but they're really important. And I wouldn't be able to do what I'm doing today or be in this position without all of, they all answer the bat signal when I call. How about that?
Well, that's encouraging to hear. And I hope that people that are listening are thinking through their list of who do they call when they have questions. And to your point, you don't want that to be single threaded. You want to have different opinions. You want to listen to those. And then you need discernment as a founder, as a CEO to say, all right, I can take these things in. I usually try to think a lot about, all right, what lens are they viewing that through or what lens are they receiving that through? Yes. And if I can take that and then use my lens of where I am and filtering that and taking those things and putting it together and go, okay, this is what I think makes the most sense. Me knowing considerably more than them because I'm in this every day, I can then take some of these things in. But I do think you make a great point that it's good to have a team of people, not just to be single threaded on that. I want to shift gears for a minute. One of the things that I think is obviously over the past year or two has been growing wildly. And part of the reason that I do this is because I get so much out of it. In the first iteration, we would film sometimes. I mean, shoot, there was one where we went for like 45 minutes and our creative director like raises her hand and she's like, oh, we're out of memory. And I go, well, we're going to keep going. Just go grab it. So she runs to her car and gets another memory card. Yeah. And we end up breaking that one up into like 2 or 3. But then we would take those and kind of condense it down into like, 5, 7, 8 minutes. These I like because they go longer. And one of the things that I always felt like in the first iteration of Business and Brews was I feel like we're leaving a lot of scraps on the table. There's a lot of really good stuff that other people aren't getting to hear. But me personally, like I get a lot out of this because I get to hear from people who are successful, who have been through different things that I've been through, who are learning in different ways. And so I get a ton out of this. And so one of the things that we talked about coming into the new year is I was kind of challenged by our team of like, well, hey, what are areas that we're using AI and how are we using it well? How can we use it better? How are other people using it? And so I'd love to kind of tee that up for you. How are you guys leveraging AI?
It drives how we run the business and this is actually really interesting for me because I am not an AI native thinker. I did not have experience in this. And now I'm running an AI company, which, might kind of be laughable on the surface. My CTO has taught himself everything and he has been the epitome of what it means to be a voracious learner right now and just really, really be open-minded to what the world is, sort of bestowing at our doorstep. And the team has taken a nod from that, which is we really ask ourselves, how can AI support questions, problems, challenges, hiring, et cetera, whatever it might be. So I'd say two things come to mind. One of which is for me on a day-to-day basis, I use it as a thinking partner. Just it's helped me draft faster. It's helped me pressure test things. I summarize. I mean, I'm sure like many of y'all are using it today. I think what I'm trying to do is expedite time on the boring stuff and really use more time for that white space thinking judgment.
Right.
And
Right.
that has been really important for me because I used to spend a lot of time trying to just synthesize and figure out how to get all the pieces together. Now, once the pipes are connected and it feeds you information, hey, as a leader, it's allowed me to make decisions much more quickly and have more confidence in them. As a decision maker, of an organization, however big, however small, that's another muscle I'm learning, to make sure I'm clear on following my gut. And so I do keep a decision log on the big things. And I look back after 30, 60, 90 days and ask myself, did I make the right call? Sometimes they're easy things like, did we hire the right person? Sometimes it's more strategic stuff like we decided to focus on A versus B. Sometimes it's more nuanced. And I'm trying to think of a good example. I'm sure it'll come to me. But the answer is that helped me. That's helped me too. And what I've been able to do there is leverage a lot of call notes. I mean, I use Whisperflow, I use Granola. We're using tools to help life just be a little bit easier to again leave that white space. But it helps me. I mean, here's a good example. And then I'll get to sort of how we use it in the business. When we were raising a seed round last year, AI really helped me organize all the call notes from my investor conversations, ensure that I was up to speed on what I owed them and what they owed me, and actually helped me read more thoughtfully than I could see into sentiment and where they were seeing gaps, but they weren't using words to say. Like I could feel hesitation, but they weren't putting words around it. And so enough questions would come up, the derivations of the same question would come up, and it helped me to see patterns that I didn't really recognize because calls were, 2, 4, 8 weeks apart. And so that was really, really helpful and actually quite masterful in allowing me to spot some areas where I just needed to strengthen the story.
Right.
I just needed to lead with the data. We had the answers, but it helped me reformat the storytelling. It helped me reformat my approach. It also just gave me a lot of confidence because I was seeing green lights across a lot of the things that, were easy for us to tell, but it was able to help me identify the yellow, red lights and just front run them.
Right.
And what that ended up doing, it's amazing if you're out there raising money or you're about to have your data, have your story, but like a level of confidence that you introduce into the conversation, not arrogance, don't get me wrong, but a level of confidence that there are a couple of things that you know really, really well. It just helped me reorient. And I think that was really helpful. So that's one sort of tangible example where it was pretty powerful.
It's a great example.
With our business, we are, the quiet behind the scenes staff for the moments that make magic for everybody else. So we are the unglamorous work being done behind the scenes at a football game, at a tailgate, at a concert, at a conference. It takes hundreds, if not thousands of people to put these things on. We're making two big bets in the world right now. One, that people want to work differently. I want flexibility. I want to choose when and where and how I work. I want to get paid fast. You and I can talk about the world of work and why that's so important.
Yeah.
And the other big bet we're making is that despite the highly digitized world that we live in, people want to come together. So these events, these human moments are really important. So in the world today, of staffing those big events, it's a lot of paper, it's a lot of pens, it's a lot of phone calls, it's a lot of chatting, it's a lot of deducing, it's a lot of hoping that you got the answer right from 5 phone calls. AI has streamlined so much of that. And so we've really enabled agents to work in the most, I would say precarious parts of a marketplace. How we acquire users, how we encourage and optimize on their, them along the journey and optimize that for them, how we assess risk, how we respond to risk, how we identify fraud, how we make sure that supply and demand are always in balance. Those were people doing hand exercises before that took hundreds, if not thousands of employees. Some of our big competitors were a team of, as of last week, 5 people. And so I think that demonstrates that we've been able to identify ways to deploy AI that has just completely turned the model on its head and now allowing marketplaces to be not only economically interesting, but actually like pretty compelling.
Right.
Whereas before those were intrinsically challenging parts of marketplaces. And, in addition, it's helping us identify patterns. The predictive staffing approach has been game changing. Claude Code is a chief of staff for my co-founders and me, thanks to Kenny, my CTO. Having that thought partner always on and connected to all the pipes and the data, like those are the ways that have allowed all of us to level up.
Yeah.
And so it's been really fun for us to be in constant learning mode. And I still feel like I'm behind.
Thank you for being so transparent and sharing that. There's a lot of little things you can do to use it, but you're talking about like really big, moving big boulders with creating more efficiency through it. And I love that because I kind of like the conversation earlier, right? About strengths and weaknesses, right? If there's things that I'm not strong at, like why can't I have AI handle some of those things for me, right? And it allows me to take my skills and put it more onto my strengths. I remember seeing an interview with President Obama at one point, like I don't know, 15 years ago, whenever he was in office, and he had just gotten into office, and somebody was asking him one of the things about how he operates on a day-to-day basis, and he says, "Well, one of the things I do is I only wear black and blue suits, and I alternate days." And I only wear white shirts. So every Sunday I go into my closet and I line it up for the 7 days: black suit, blue suit, black suit, blue suit, and then white shirts. And then I just pick the tie out on Sunday after. So it may take me, 10, 15 minutes on Sunday afternoon, but that's one thing that I don't have to think about in the morning. And ever since then, I've been like, my wife will still make fun of me sometimes. Like I'll lay my clothes out the night before in our closet so I can just go in there and grab it and get going. I'm like, if there's one thing I don't have to think about in the morning that just helps me jump in and start doing whatever I need to do.
Yes.
And so it like you could take that, and that's like a really small example, but you take that and then you go, all right, well, that's allowing me to put my best energy forward on the things that matter the most. And so if you can take a similar mentality to leveraging AI, and it sounds like you guys, not only you personally, but you as a business are doing that to me shows, if I was an investor when you were going through that seed round, I would sit there and I would think like this is a company who is thinking about massive scale and doing it in an efficient a manner as possible, which I think is pretty incredible.
Well, you raise a good point. So yes, that's the hope. And that is exactly, we look at call it idiosyncrasies. We look at the challenges of the sort of staffing agencies before us and why it's hard and why they charge so much. For us, we have a bit of a Walmart mentality, which is like, if we can really find the most efficient way forward, I'd like to pass that cost savings to our customers. I really would. And so we're able to be 10 to 15 points cheaper, and it's the business still makes sense. Somehow those things can both be true. But on the personal side, like, we're parents. I still aspire to be a present mom. And so when I think about the, lack of flexibility or long hours that I know my spouse has, particularly in certain seasons, I know that it's really important for one of us to always be on deck. I know. So when we think about travel schedules, when we think about meal planning, when we think about paying childcare, like that's all ChatGPT for me. And
Right.
so
That's great.
what do we have in the refrigerator in the pantry? What does the grocery list look like? Build me the meal plan and keep it, within the parameters of 30-minute prep, seasonally appropriate, hitting the marks. And so those sound like silly examples, but those, to your point, if I can systematize some of the stuff that doesn't really require my judgment, I don't really care if we're going to have chicken or flank steak tonight. I just know that I need to make sure it's thawed, it's ready, and like I've got some capacity to go do that so that we're sitting down as a family. Because there are some things that are non-negotiable for me. Like we sit down as a family, barring the things that like the nights that we really can't, like together around the table. And every family's going to be different. But like there's some couple hours of my day where my team knows like it's a no-go zone. And call me because I run a business. So like if there's an emergency, of course. But the reality is usually the things that are on fire might be smoldering or they're not turning into a wildfire. And so that time is important. So I'm trying to maximize it. And I don't really want to be thinking about how I put together 18 ingredients to make something I've never made before that may or may not turn out well. And so I know it sounds silly, but getting dressed, the paying the folks that are in your, whether it's we order groceries online, like anything I can do to systematize my life, because that white space I've just found is so important. And again, if you ask me, the version of me 5 years ago, I would have had every moment of my calendar scripted. Now, it still is scripted to some extent, but now there's blocks, and those blocks go in first.
Right.
Family time. I work out in the mornings. I take a walk after lunch just to like process what's going on in my day. I've got my time to talk to my team one-on-one to make sure like they've got a space. Like I'm not perfect, let's be honest, but I did it the wrong way 5 years ago.
Right.
I tried to smash those things in on top of the priorities we needed to fit as a business. And the reality is like, there's not a question why they didn't work.
Right.
So
Right.
anyway, AI has allowed me to help systematize some of those things too that gotta get done. But it's really allowed me, again, the space for judgment, thinking, or just, again, not great at this, just
Right.
being here,
So good.
playtime. So
It's so good.
yeah.
Well, look, I think we could go for another 30 minutes because of I'm sitting here thinking of things that I need to be doing better and using ChatGPT for more. From hearing you talk about some of that stuff, I literally was just like, I haven't thought about plugging in what all we've got in our fridge and in the pantry and then starting to build. That's so good. That's really good stuff.
I'm sure I riffed it from someone else, but the truth is the capacity is, I don't
Yeah.
know,
Right.
endless. So
Right. Well, we kind of wrap up here. 2026. What does Crew have in store? What are you most excited about professionally in this new year?
We just hired a couple of people, so I am really excited we've run so lean for so long. So there's a level of, we talked about culture and values and process. It's, as a leader, I'm hopeful that the culture, which is written down, we've got the values and the mission statement, but the culture for us at this stage is what we all do every day, how we act when nobody's watching. And it'll be really interesting to me, if I'm just being vulnerable and open, to see if we're able to, if I think we hired the right people, if we're able to give them the tools to be able to get an A in the culture that we've created, right? I want them to get an A, and to see my people succeed. So it's been a really interesting moment of people building and in people investing for me personally, just as we built the teams. That's really exciting to watch because, at the end of the day, like, the company is people. We've got great systems in place. We've got a really cool business proposition. The problem's there, blah, blah, blah. But, it comes down to execution. Can you
Hmm.
get the job done? And
Right.
the people that we've got and the systems in place, I'm really excited about seeing those come to fruition. I think the other thing too, we talked about proving yourself. I'm kind of out of that mode for professionally, but I do believe that we have, in terms of doing that for somebody else, I'm now excited to see how we can prove that AI is really important, really necessary and really impactful to real world businesses, like physical businesses that we play in,
Mhm.
right? It's been pretty clear on its impact in the digital world, but we're bringing that to the physical world today. And I think that some of the folks that we work with are really traditionalistic in their thinking. What'll be interesting to see if we can compel them to see the world in a slightly different way. And that's going to be the big question, because I know the bets we're taking. I believe in them. I've got great optimism, obviously, but can we see that transition? And I think the answer is going to be yes. And we're really psyched about a big year. We're psyched about growth. We're psyched about the big goals ahead. To be truthful, if you're not so pumped up about the problem, you shouldn't be running a startup.
Right.
And I am so psyched about the problem we're solving. So with that, here I am, ever the optimist, ever the eager and excited one, but just really, really thrilled rolling into the new year. And it's palpable with my team. So I'm feeling grateful, And, as we get older, it's like everybody's healthy. Got, the family is moving forward and progressing in all the special ways. And so I don't know. I just take it one day at a time and realize that I probably can plan out the next 2 or 3 quarters, but let's be honest, there's some twists and turns that I can't see coming,
Yeah.
and they're going to hit me smack in the face. So
Right.
let's catch up in 6 months and see how it really went.
Right. Right. Well, that's so awesome. I'm a fan of Crew's and of yours. I appreciate you joining us today, and I'll be cheering you guys on in 2026 and hope to see all the good things happening. So thanks for being on here, Jennifer. Really enjoyed it. Great conversation, and I hope everybody else got as much out of that as I did. I should have been taking notes, but I've got the transcripts.
There we
Technically, I
go.
was, I guess, right? So thank you so
Thank you,
much for
AI.
being here.
Oh, it's great. Thanks for the time. It was wonderful as always. Great to see you.
Same here. All right. Thanks, everybody. We'll catch you on the next one.